Welcome to my attempt to film the back nine here at the KCR Logan Disc Golf Course. Now I have a basic tripod set up and I'm trying to capture what it looks like to play this rather challenging back nine. The whole course is a tough woods course, but the back nine in particular always catches me out. So the back nine starts off with the easiest hole of the entire course. 10 is a straight shot that just requires you to get around a guardian clump of trees at the front of the green. So for me, I'm typically aiming to the right and looking for my disc to fade back towards the basket, which today I came up just a little bit short. It left me with about a 20-foot putt, which I'll have to admit is actually a challenging tester for me. Now some of these holes are true holes. Some of these holes I've actually had to edit some footage to show what I think is good golf. Now that happens only on 2 holes, but I'll leave it up to y'all to figure out which ones are real and which ones are movie magic. So hole 11 is challenging because you have a big clump of trees that's scattered throughout. It's one of those holes where the lines are very tight and there's a little bit of finger crossing when you let it go. Now in this case, I got a great shot through the trees and I ended up bouncing right off a tree, leaving me right at the top. This is one of my better drives ever on this hole. And my putt was fairly short, but I did have to straddle around the side of this tree because it was directly blocking my lie. But it was only about 10, maybe 12 feet. So birdie 10, birdie 11. Oh, by the way, this was a true hole as well. I'm kind of proud to say that. So unless you're left-handed, 12 is a challenging hole. It can be done well with a forehand, but for me, I try to throw a backhand anhyzer, and I use a mid-range just to make sure that as the disc falls out, it comes straight and lands down the middle of this fairway, which you really can't see until I come up on the approach shot here. Now when I've had bad drives, they tend to go off into the woods on either side, so the mid-range ensures that I can land here in the middle and get a pretty good approach shot, which that was not a good example of. I definitely shanked that to the right, leaving myself with about a 25-30 foot putt, which is well outside of my comfort range. So again, I guess I'm giving myself away, but this was a real hole, and I actually did get a bogey. So hole 13, much like 17 as you'll see later, requires a righty to have a pretty good forehand drive. In this case, you've got a 250-foot long fairway that's fairly narrow and has a whole lot of jail on either side of it. And the basket is tucked way up on the right in a pocket of trees. Now I'm using a fairway driver, and I thought I had a pretty good shape to the drive. However, I came up about 40 or 45 feet short. Now I'm lucky in that I have a lane through the trees here, but getting off of this fairway is very difficult. And when I first was learning and didn't have a forehand, my backhands were consistently falling off to the left and leaving me with very, very challenging approach shots or quite often bogeys. So I like hole 14 for a few different reasons. The shape of the hole matches the shape of my shot. As a righty throwing backhand, it's just comfortable to flip flat and then hopefully have it fade around and slide under the basket. See example here. This is actually a great drive, and I'll give it away again. This was real. Hole 14 is also one of the first holes I birdied, and it has never really given me too much teeth. I've occasionally taken a bogey here and there, but it's not so bad. So it's really the last friendly hole before you come up to the dreaded 15. So hole 15 kicks off the very challenging last 4 holes to wrap up the KCR Logan course. And it's a nasty dogleg left that is full of wood with a blind tee shot. You're really looking at trying to make the 2 guardians here. There's 2 guardians right there, and then you hope you don't hear that sound. But in this case, I actually got pretty lucky. Whatever I hit didn't knock me too far out. And I pulled off a pretty good approach to this mound up here. Now the basket being on a mound is another challenge that makes putting a little bit scary. Now that's a pretty lucky par there for me, and I'll let you try to figure out if it was real or not. But I did this just as an example of a very typical experience for a lot of us who play out here, is that disc rolling away. Now hole 16 really stands out as it's the only open hole in the entire course. It's got an elevated tee pad, a big wide open view, and it does have out of bounds running along that fence line. So for me, I'm usually trying to throw a little bit out of bounds, perhaps get a touch of flex in the disc, and bring it back with the fade and hopefully fall in the center of the fairway. I was happy with that, and I'm up here near these pine trees, which is a pretty good drive for me. This is definitely upper percentile of my drives. Could have been a little better with the approach shot, but honestly, a par on 16, a par on any of these last 4 holes is really a win in my book. Hole 17 is one of those holes that required me to learn how to use a forehand. It's a right-handed dogleg that can be reached with an anhyzer on the backhand throw, but really does better with a forehand, especially since you're throwing into a clump of trees. Now I have a little bit of an issue with hole 17 in that there is not a clear path to the basket. Once you throw around the corner here, you're really just hoping you don't hear yourself hit a tree and you get a lucky slide. Now bear in mind, I am obviously not an expert disc golf player, but I really don't see a professional even finding a way through some of the challenging spots here. Oh, that was so close. I've never birdied 17 and I would have been very happy to have done so here. But once again, looking at a par on 17, heading towards 18 with my fingers crossed I can make it out alive. So the last hole of the course is also one of the most difficult. It's a par 4 and is heavily wooded from the drive all the way through to a guarded basket. Now you can't see the basket from the tee. You really can't see it until you get about halfway up the air quotes fairway. I don't think there's anything fair about this. Now for me, I'm trying to make these 2 guardians, and I'll admit my first drive smashed right into the one on the right. So this is one of the edit holes, so I've kind of given away my game, sorry. But this drive ended off to the left. It's distance. It's not the greatest drive, but you're really trying to get distance on 18. And I had a really lucky shot cutting across the fairway and actually hyzering down the right sideline to end up here pretty much center cut. Now the green itself is guarded, so it's a challenging shot to try to get through there. I didn't even attempt to run it. I just went for the putt in and took my fake par. So hopefully you've enjoyed this. I had a lot of fun filming. It wasn't too challenging to lug that thing around, and hopefully we'll do a few more of these in the future.